Daniel's hand cracked across Elizabeth's face before the tray hit the ground. The sound was sharp and ugly, and for one long second, the whole backyard held its breath. The grill hissed. Lemonade spread in a slow amber pool around Elizabeth's shoes, soaking the laces she had double-knotted that morning while humming to herself. Daniel stepped closer, jaw tight, voice low and righteous. "Don't you ever touch me again." Elizabeth pressed a trembling hand to her cheek. The skin was already hot. "I didn't. Clean this mess and get out." Everyone had seen it, her cousins, her aunt, her sister. But nobody moved. Then Melissa, Elizabeth's own sister, walked forward. Elizabeth's heart lifted for the briefest moment. Finally, someone. But Melissa walked right past her and planted herself beside Daniel, arms folded, chin high, as though she were guarding a man who had just been attacked. "Apologize to him," Melissa said. Elizabeth stared, her voice small with disbelief. "Melissa, he slapped me." Melissa's eyes, the same shade of brown as Elizabeth's, turned to flint. "Apologize or leave." Elizabeth looked around at the barbecue she had helped set up that morning, the folding tables she had arranged, the paper decorations she had bought with her own money because Melissa said funds were tight again. Her throat closed, but her voice came out steadier than she felt. "No." Daniel gave a short, smug laugh, like her refusal proved something he had always believed. Melissa pointed toward the gate. "Then leave." Elizabeth walked through the yard with her cheek burning and her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped her keys. Behind her, she heard Daniel mutter, "Always playing innocent." No one followed. At her car, her phone buzzed. Harper and Lois State Attorneys. Urgent call requested. She barely registered it through the hot blur of tears she refused to shed. Inside the yard, a fork clinked against a plate. Someone forced a laugh. Daniel's voice rose, confident again. Elizabeth had no idea that within hours, something would be waiting at their front door that would make every silent guest relive this moment and regret it. She drove without the radio. The silence was louder than the slap. At every red light, she caught her reflection. The faint red mark blooming on her cheek. She touched it once, then pulled her hand away as if the skin remembered. "I didn't even do anything," she whispered to the empty car. By the time she reached her small townhouse, the anger had cooled into a heavy, bone-deep exhaustion. She placed her keys on the kitchen counter and found herself staring at a framed photograph, her, Melissa, and their grandfather in his garden, his hands resting on both their shoulders. Memories arrived uninvited. When Melissa had returned to work after her first child, Elizabeth had spent nearly every afternoon for a year with the baby, reading the same board books until the words came automatically. "I don't know what we'd do without you," Melissa had said, and Elizabeth had felt so seen. When Daniel lost his job, Elizabeth quietly paid 2 overdue utility bills after Melissa called in tears. "No one can know," Melissa begged. "They won't," Elizabeth promised, and she never spoke of it again. Birthdays, Christmases, family reunions. Elizabeth was the one who arrived early, left late, and stayed invisible. Daniel's cruelty hadn't started at the barbecue. It had started years earlier, small and insidious, a joke about her job, her love life, her weight. "Still single? You work too much. You always try so hard." At every family dinner, he interrupted her. Melissa always laughed it off, "Oh, that's just Daniel." Over time, the whole family adopted that shrug. His disrespect became the background noise of every gathering, and Elizabeth learned to shrink herself to keep the peace. Once, she accidentally parked in his favorite spot. Daniel announced loudly, "Guess some people still don't understand basic manners." Everyone laughed. Elizabeth silently moved her car. Not one person told him he was being unreasonable. She had believed swallowing her pride was the price of belonging. Today, with her cheeks still throbbing and her sister's words ringing in her ears, she understood the real price had been far higher. Her phone vibrated again. She picked it up. One new voicemail. She pressed play. Ms. Carter, this is Michael Harper from Harper & Lowe Estate Attorneys. Please return my call at your earliest convenience regarding the occupancy agreement connected to your grandfather's estate. This matter requires your immediate attention. Elizabeth stared at the phone. She had hoped to avoid all of this. But something inside her had cracked and reformed into something harder. Not because of the slap alone, because Melissa had looked into her eyes and chosen to protect a bully over her own blood. She pressed call. The attorney answered immediately. Ms. Carter, thank you for returning my call. I'm sorry it comes at a difficult time. Has something happened? Elizabeth's voice was quiet but clear. Yes. As I explained when your grandfather's estate was finalized, the occupancy agreement that allows your sister and her husband to remain in the house includes specific conditions. One addresses harassment, intimidation, or physical abuse directed toward you. I remember. If you can confirm that those conditions have been violated, you are under no legal obligation to continue the arrangement. Elizabeth closed her eyes. She remembered her grandfather's voice, gentle but firm. From a conversation months ago, you've always protected everyone else, Lizzie. Let the papers protect you. At the time, she had thought he was just being dramatic. If I decide today, can it be done legally and immediately? Yes. Without delay. She looked at her reflection in the dark phone screen, at the fading red mark. Please move forward. The attorney's voice softened. I'll begin right away. The call ended. A strange calm settled over her. For the first time, she wasn't running. She had drawn a line, and she was standing on the other side of it. Across town, the barbecue was staggering on. The adults moved with a forced, uneasy cheerfulness. Daniel stood by the cooler, holding court. She's always been dramatic. Barely brushed me and acted like I was the victim. A couple of cousins stared at their plates. Some people need to learn boundaries. She did this to herself. Melissa nodded loyally beside him. Exactly. She could have apologized. Aunt Carol set down her drink. Daniel, I watched what happened. You slapped her. Daniel shrugged. You didn't see it from my angle. I saw enough. Melissa stepped in, her voice icy. My husband doesn't owe anyone an explanation. Daniel smirked. See, even Melissa understands. But something had shifted. Whispers threaded through the yard. Phones appeared. A text to Elizabeth, are you okay? Another, I'm sorry nobody stopped him. An older uncle muttered to his wife, we should have said something. She nodded grimly. Daniel noticed the change in the air. What's everybody so quiet about? No one answered. Melissa forced a brittle smile. They're just tired. As they loaded the SUV, Daniel clapped his hands together. Elizabeth will call tomorrow pretending none of this happened. Melissa sighed. She always comes around. Daniel slammed the tailgate. People like her never stay mad. They drove home, convinced the day had gone exactly as Daniel wanted. But behind them, the family they had dismissed as an audience was quietly choosing sides. 20 minutes later, Daniel turned onto their street and slowed. Parked in front of their house were a white sedan and a dark vehicle. 3 figures stood on the front walk, a man in a crisp navy suit holding a leather briefcase, a uniformed locksmith with a toolbox, and a courier carrying a large sealed envelope. Melissa leaned forward. Are they at the wrong house? Daniel climbed out with rehearsed confidence. Can I help you? Good evening. I'm Michael Harper, attorney for the owner of this property. Daniel's confidence flickered. The owner? Melissa stepped beside him. There's been a mistake. The attorney handed Daniel the envelope. Before you go inside, read page 1. Daniel tore it open. The first page read, Notice of Termination of Occupancy Agreement. He flipped to the next page, and the color vanished from his face. Melissa grabbed the papers and read aloud, her voice unsteady. The legal owner of the property is Elizabeth Carter, pursuant to the final probate order and recorded deed following the estate of Harold Carter. That's impossible, she whispered. There is no mistake. Your grandfather transferred the deed to Elizabeth months ago. This occupancy agreement was a temporary privilege, not a right, and it includes conditions. Melissa stared at her grandfather's signature, and memories crashed over her. Grandpa requesting Elizabeth drive him to appointments while Daniel made jokes, Grandpa asking everyone else to leave the room so he could speak to Elizabeth alone. Melissa had assumed it was about medical paperwork. Now, the truth was unmistakable. Daniel slammed the papers. We've lived here for years. The attorney pointed. Condition 7. Occupancy terminates immediately upon verified harassment, intimidation, or physical violence toward Elizabeth Carter. Daniel scoffed. You weren't there. But witnesses were. He produced a folder, signed statements from Aunt Carol, Uncle Robert, 2 cousins, even Daniel's own younger brother. Every account matched. Elizabeth had bumped him accidentally. He had struck her. Melissa had demanded she apologize. Daniel grabbed his phone. I'm calling everyone. He dialed Uncle Robert. Robert's voice was flat. I'm not lying for you. Click. Another cousin, no answer. Aunt Carol, you hit her, Daniel. I'm not defending you. The line went dead. The silence he had counted on had transformed into a wall of truth. Melissa sank onto the front steps, tears spilling. I told her to leave, she choked. What have I done? The locksmith stepped forward. The crisp, metallic click of the new lock echoed through the quiet evening. Daniel stood motionless. For the first time all day, he had absolutely nothing to say. The attorney spoke gently. This wasn't about one argument. Your grandfather anticipated this day. He watched Elizabeth care for him, driving to every appointment, managing his medication, sitting with him during the holidays when others were too busy. He saw you mock her, Daniel. He told us he hoped the agreement would never be needed, but he made sure Elizabeth would be protected if it was. He believed in her because she never once asked for anything. Melissa's voice broke. So he expected this. He hoped otherwise. He prepared for the truth. Daniel's shoulders sagged. I never thought she'd actually do it. The attorney looked at him with quiet finality. She didn't do this. You did. Ms. Carter simply exercised a right she already had, the one her grandfather gave her. Melissa pulled out her phone and called Elizabeth with shaking hands. It rang. Voicemail. She spoke through tears. Elizabeth. I'm so sorry. I should have stood beside you. I kept choosing his comfort over what was right. You deserved a sister today, and I wasn't one. She hung up, knowing no apology could undo what she had allowed. In the following weeks, Daniel and Melissa packed their belongings. The family shifted. Aunt Carol apologized. Uncle Robert admitted his cowardice. Cousins confessed they had always despised Daniel's behavior. Elizabeth accepted their words with quiet grace, but she offered no absolution, only thanks for their honesty. Daniel's invitations dwindled, and the easy authority he once commanded evaporated. The truth had caught up with him, and it did not let go. A month later, Elizabeth unlocked the front door of her grandfather's house. She repaired the porch railing he had always meant to fix. She planted flowers in the garden where he used to sit in the morning sun. Inside, she painted the walls in the warm, golden colors he had once talked about but never got around to choosing. For the first time, the house felt peaceful, not because it was empty, but because it was free from fear. She stopped saying yes to every request, stopped trading her dignity for a seat at the table. If someone respected her, she helped without hesitation. If they didn't, she walked away without guilt. By summer's end, she hosted a small barbecue in the same backyard. This time, laughter came easily. Children ran through the grass. Respect replaced the old, uneasy silence. As the sun dipped low, Aunt Carol handed her a plate and said, "Your grandfather would be proud." Elizabeth looked around, at the flowers, the kind faces, the home that finally felt like hers. She smiled softly. Walking away from that barbecue wasn't the moment I lost my family. It was the moment I finally stopped accepting a version of family that demanded my silence. In choosing her self-respect, she gained the peaceful life her grandfather had always hoped she would have.